Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973.
10 to 9, here's a question for you. What links towns such as Hastings and Hartlepool and Bedford and Bishop Auckland? Well, ka-ching, they're all in line to share more than £700 million. But why? What's the thinking behind it? Let's turn to Robert Jenrick, who's Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, who joins me now. Good morning, Secretary of State. Why are they getting the cash? What are they meant to do with it?
Well, we said that we wanted to level up all parts of the country and make sure that a young person growing up in Bishop Auckland had exactly the same chances to succeed in life as somebody growing up in Leeds or indeed in London. And so we are investing in these communities as part of 100 places that we're deploying cash for the Towns Fund. And this will be for infrastructure, for skills, for culture, for town centre regeneration.
So what will the good folk of Hastings physically or practically see, or indeed Bedford for that matter, what will they actually see in some instances, Secretary of State?
Well, local communities themselves have chosen what to invest in, and so we offered them up to £25 million, and they've brought together local politicians, the business community, those people running schools and colleges, and come up with their own proposals. A lot of them have been investing in the future of town centres and high streets. Very sensible. As we're coming out of COVID, they're under more stress than ever before. A lot of emphasis on skills, particularly post-16, so that somebody can go to a good college, get good vocational and technical education, but also other things like tourism, culture, ways of bringing vitality and visitors into these often very beautiful places, but which now need a bit of a boost as we're coming out of the pandemic.
We are coming out of the pandemic. Let's move to other matters if we can. Talking of coming out, let's talk about that roadmap. What do you think is going to happen on June the 21st, Secretary of State?
Well, I can't tell you the result this morning, I'm afraid. The PM is reviewing the data. It was right to give ourselves this 5-week period between the two stages of the roadmap. That's actually proving invaluable because there's still data to analyse. It looks like it's quite a finely balanced decision. In truth, there is medical and scientific opinion on both sides.
Where would you place your bet? Your colleague Michael Gove said he'd put money on hitting June 21st. Would you?
Well, I think it's very finely balanced. And
I know that, Mr. Jenrick. Come along now, Mr. Jenrick. Would you bet?
Well, I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's helpful for me to say where I think it's heading because at the moment we're still waiting for the final data, and then I think at that point the PM on the 14th of June will be able to give us the final decision. There are things which are certainly moving in the right direction. The vaccine rollout, the evidence we've seen from places like Bolton has been positive because although you've seen a considerable rise in the number of cases, it hasn't led to hospitalisations and serious illness amongst the older age groups. If that can be replicated across the country, then that's very positive.
Right. Lord Lloyd Webber is ready, I think, to be arrested to hit that June 21st date. What would you say to him?
Well, I'd love to see theatres reopening. I know he's got a great production of Cinderella opening in the West End. Would love to be taking my kids to it. But I would just urge him, having been so patient over the last 18 months, I know it's been devastating for his industry and his own businesses, just wait a few more days as the Prime Minister analyses the data. We don't want to keep these restrictions in place a day longer than is necessary. But equally, we always said that the 21st of June was the earliest date in which we could move to the next stage of the roadmap.
Should people holiday at home, or could they look forward later to holidaying overseas? Secretary of State.
Well, we've said that we would like to see more countries go onto the green list, those countries where you can go on holiday. But we can't guarantee that because that depends on what is happening in those countries, their own vaccine rollout, the number of cases and new variants. So I would exercise a high degree of caution personally. Don't go and book a holiday in any country that's on the red list or the amber list. Book one if you want on those countries, the small number that are on the green list. But even there, we've seen with Portugal, things can change quite rapidly. So I would choose an operator that can give you the flexibility you need so you can reschedule or get a refund. And I think a lot of people are coming to the conclusion that this is not a normal summer. Maybe enjoy the many things that this country has to offer on this occasion. I
mean, some in the travel industry are accusing the government of a U-turn on this. I'm sure you've seen the headlines. How do you respond to that, Secretary of State?
No, we've got a clear plan, and we would like to see more countries go onto the green list, but we're not going to do so imprudently. We've got to protect everything that we've achieved domestically in this country. It would be foolish to throw that away, and so we're going to proceed quite cautiously. You can see that with the decision that we made with Portugal, which was a safety-first approach, but I hope people will appreciate that, given that we are leading the world with the vaccine rollout, let's protect that as far as we can, even if that means there'll be fewer opportunities for foreign holidays this summer.
OK. Finally, noting you went to the other place, Oxford University, or one college, taking down a portrait of the Queen. Just to remind everybody, Mr. Jenrick attended Cambridge, but to the dark blue side of the equation. Is that right, to take down a picture of the monarch? Mr. Jenrick?
Well, this really is student union politics, and I don't think it's worth us getting too worked up about it. It does seem ridiculous. Their reasons are pretty ignorant. I certainly hold the Queen in the highest esteem. People all over the world do. And as is quite well known, I have a portrait of the Queen in my office, and I'm very proud to do so.
Nothing would tempt you to take that down, I sense, Mr. Jenrick.
No, absolutely. I've moved it from office to office whilst I've been in government, and I'll hold on to that one.
Thanks for your time, Robert Jenrick, who's Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, talking about that expenditure in those towns. OK, back to the portrait. We've got a couple of minutes left before we move to other matters. 4 to 9 the time. Mark in Wimbledon, right or wrong, and why? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. I think wrong. I think one of the speakers to whom you spoke earlier used the word glorify. He said that the painting glorifies the Queen and what the Queen represents. For me, this is really missing the point. I think the representations in history don't glorify at all. They simply mark something. They simply say it happened. And I think if in 300 years' time